Who is John Meier? He is 51. He's married. He lives in Tawasin with his family. He was an aide to that mystery man of all times, Howard Hughes. He, that's Meyer, was called to testify of his knowledge in the Watergate scandal.
Howard Hughes, the phantom financier who ruled a business empire valued at more than $2 billion, died on Monday at the age of 70. John Meier, a former aide to Hughes for 10 years, said that there should be a congressional hearing into his death. He believes the scandal surrounding Hughes, the CIA, and the U.S. government is bigger even than Watergate. Ian Parker, CTV's Vancouver correspondent, talks with Mr. Meier.
Is it necessary to carry out all these ruses of Howard Hughes being here, Howard Hughes being there?
They took advantage of it by the fact, knowing that he was becoming a vegetable. That's when the CIA stepped into the picture now. They may have been operating with the Hughes organization for quite a number of years. I only found out about their activities in 1968. I say he wasn't here in Canada. I say he wasn't in London, England. I say he wasn't in the Bahamas for many reasons. Why did they keep up the facade? They kept up the facade because you're talking about billions of dollars being involved. You're talking about an organization, a Hughes organization, which was now a front for the CIA internationally. And there were a lot of individuals in power who could not afford to have it come out that Howard Hughes was not in control of his organizations.
What about the Hughes involvement with the CIA? Was there some sort of a romance there? And why was the CIA so interested in the Hughes organization?
Why? Well, the CIA moved in primarily because the Hughes organization was and is a perfect front for the CIA. It's an organization that's owned and controlled by one man, Howard Hughes. The CIA would not have to worry about any shareholders. They could make numerous decisions. Number two, the Hughes organization was involved in the oil business. They were involved in the satellite programs. They were international. They were all over the world. And it's a perfect front for the CIA. It was, who could question it? Who would question it? Here Howard Hughes got divorced. He didn't even have a wife. He had no children. Now, who could question anything? If Howard Hughes died 4 years ago, who would know it? If he was a vegetable, who could question it? And they took over. Don't forget, that's a $4 billion organization we're talking about.
She went to Mexico and copied 4,000 documents that were then delivered to MP John Reynolds. For the first time, Terry Trevelyan describes how she became involved in a case that is now having repercussions on Parliament Hill and in courtrooms in Utah and Nevada. The complicated litigation arises because of business dealings of John Meier, now a resident of Delta and a landed immigrant in Canada. Meyer is a former associate of Howard Hughes and a former Nevada political figure. Ms. Trevelyan was the courier who used documents from the government of Canada to gain access to official Mexican files, which she delivered to John Reynolds. Reynolds then turned them over to John Meier.
The Canadian government, the Canadian embassy, the House of Parliament got involved in an American court case on behalf of somebody who is here under the strangest of circumstances.
Well, I would disagree with you there. I think the Canadian government let John Meier in this country because they knew that he was being politically harassed in the United States. And that's exactly why he was given landed status. You know, an interesting
John Meier
point
is a
here.
Political refugee.
Some of you people, let me finish the story, Jack. Some of you people, you know, have printed in the past that it was because of myself that John Meier got his landed immigrant status.
I have never printed that because it was Andy Bruin and Tommy Douglas.
Well, they did a lot of work, but it even wasn't them. Because I sat down with Andy Bruin and Tommy Douglas, and we agreed that John Meier should be allowed to stay in this country without the harassment he was getting at that time and be allowed to go back and forth across the border. We asked the minister for a letter to that effect, which he gave us, and we agreed with him at the time that if he didn't feel free to grant Meier his landed immigrant status, we would understand that because of the court case. It was the government that turned around and gave John Meier his landed status. And I'm convinced they did that because after their investigations and talking to officials in the U.S. that they believed he was being politically harassed. And as you know, a lot of the people in that area from the Watergate situation, for which he had some testimony to give, were harassed. And some of them from the Nixon side even went to jail. And, you know, I think there's a whole area going back into those Nixon years that could be looked at. And this is one man who suffered an awful lot because of it. And I know that the people in Canada have harassed him because they've come to me and told me stories that I've checked out that were not true.
That's why you provided the resources of Parliament and the External Affairs
That's why I said, as a member of Parliament, let's get those documents and have a look at them, because I believe that there's some activity in this country that shouldn't be going on, and I think that activity will come out.
We have a memo dated 1965, supposedly from the CIA. Now, this memo orders the Hughes organization. There you have it on your cameras now, on your TV monitors now. It orders the Hughes organization to fund candidates, including Congressman Gerald Ford, and a list of others, a host of others, I should say, including Democrats as well as Republicans. Now, Larry and Lawrence, how did you find out about that memo and the fact that the CIA was ordering Hughes to fund political candidates?
Geraldo, about 15 months ago, a document came to our attention that indicated that possibly the CIA had been spying on Hugh Hefner. And we started to check that out. And in the course of that investigation, we met John Meier, one of the two Hughes executives who was involved in this story. And John Meier started telling us a lot of extremely interesting stories about Howard Hughes, about the agency, and about Nixon. And at first we didn't believe him, so we started checking him out. And in the course of that, as we got to know him better and he told us more, he finally gave us this memo, at which point we went and checked that memo out, and that's how we found it.
He was charged with the murder of Netter in Los Angeles, a business colleague of some description, along with Vancouver lawyer Gordon Hazelwood. Hazelwood was subsequently dropped from the murder charge and from the extradition proceedings, which saw Meyer go south. At least one Canadian cabinet minister, now a cabinet minister, Tom Siddon of Delta, asked for an investigation of irregularities, perhaps circling around the extradition. And a former Justice Minister, Davy Fulton, has recently asked the new Tory Justice Minister for a review of the extradition proceedings. And even the judge who approved the extradition, Mr. Justice Sam Toy, went public later and said that there may have been made a mistake, implying that Meyer might not perhaps, or should not perhaps, have been extradited. Meyer, sure as blazes, is a mystery man.